Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, and I have the honor of interviewing Mr. Paul A. Teismann here at the Blue Ash Library on the 4th of November 2006. Our camera operator today is Joel Carnelli.
Join the majority.
Just a little fun there. So here we are, and Paul, let's start out at the basic. You've got some great experiences to tell us about, but where did you grow up?
Primary Cincinnati, Mount Auburn, Cincinnati.
Oh boy.
Yeah, just walked through distance from there was the big hospital up there in Mount
Sure,
Auburn.
the Christ Hospital.
The Christ Hospital, yeah.
Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to St. Paul's Parochial School down in Lower Mount Auburn. And then after,
That isn't there anymore, is it?
it's a museum for the people that make the bells.
Oh, Verdon.
Verdon, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I haven't been in there since they opened it up.
Oh boy, it's a beautiful place.
Well, I had not too many things that I was scared of, but that neighborhood was getting pretty. It was primarily when I was growing up. It was a center for bootlegging when I was growing up down there, and so it was nothing unusual when we were going to church on Sunday to see the paddy wagon backed up in front of their houses right across the street there, picking up some of our parishioners and that, because it was an interesting neighborhood.
I should say.
And of course, there's a big old shoe factory right there on Pendleton Street.
Right.
And I don't know what they're making out of that thing now, building up the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But, so.
Yeah, that neighborhood has changed a lot, but it's become quite an arts neighborhood.
I understand.
They've
But because of the, the crimes that are being committed around here in the over the Rhine district, that just scares the daylights out of me, because it wasn't the best neighborhood in the world, but it was a safe neighborhood.
Well, it was a very vibrant neighborhood, because there were working people and working families and contributing to the building of our community. So, where did you go to high school?
Mechanical Vocational High School up on McMillan Street.
Mechanical Vocational High School.
Right, it's right, Bo Brummel Tires was next door to us.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was Gruen, I think it's Gruen or Hershey Hall Clock right across the street.
Right.
And that, up there on Essex and McMillan.
Sure, well that's an interesting neighborhood too, huh?
And I think it is.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Then after high school, what happened?
Well, we only had a 2-year course, and you only had 1 week vacation when I was going there. So 2 years was equal to 4 years in a conventional high school. And so when I graduated, my jobs were few and far between. Mm-hmm. And so I elected to go back up there, because when I told my dad I wanted to enlist in the service and that, so he was about ready to kill me, because at those days what was the National Guard was not the only thing available, and my dad wasn't too hip on the National Guard at the time. He said, "I'll kill you before you go." Just kidding. So I elected to go back up to mechanical and talk to the principal up there, and I told him that nothing out there on the streets. Of course, he was well aware, that employment at that time.
Well, this is right in the depth of the Depression, the Great Depression. I remember that so well.
Because I went back from 1939 for a postgraduate course, and so Wally, he said, "Well, come on back up here, Teismann." He said, "We'll see what we can do."
You had mechanical aptitude, didn't you?
Well, I could take a pocket watch apart, but
Wow.
I have never ever seen me get it back together again. I mean, I just pack all the parts inside the case and then put a rubber band around it, and so I was able to put it back together that way. But that's about the only mechanical aptitude that I had, really. But book learning was not for me. My mother tried to get me to go to Woodward High School or someplace like that. but I could never remember anything. When I was going to grade school, I always had to pop my books up in front of me at breakfast time and hope that I remember it by the time I got in there and had the nuns ask me a question without slapping me on the wrist with a ruler or something if I didn't remember. So I went back up there and took some advanced classes and went back down to the machine shops. So the teachers had me instructing some of the younger people coming there, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I was a big shot now. Because,
Sure. You're an authority.
I was a big shot, you know, and in other words, they were telling me what to do before I got there, and now I'm trying to tell them what to do.
Right.
Instructing them. And consequently, I got an education by doing that.
Sure. So we're talking about, what, about 1940?
1939.
1939,
38,
okay.
39.
And then the war clouds were beginning to form in Europe. Were you aware of anything that was going on across the Atlantic?
Well, because my brother had gone in, and when the war broke out in 41, it terrified me because I thought
Right.
sure my brother would go in because they assigned him to an engineering thing. He was up in Fort Belvoir, Virginia for
Okay.
a while, and my brother...
So you were still here in town
Right.
on December the 7th, 1941.
Right, right. And at that time, well, my folks had moved from Mount Arbor over to Sedamsville and Delhi Pike.
Oh, yes.
They bought a little house over there, and so that's where my brother entered the service from Sedamsville.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
He was, what, 2 years older than you?
right, but he was just a year advanced in the service.
Right.
So I stayed down here until I was drafted into the service, and went in over at Fort Thomas for a day or so. From Fort Thomas, they sent me up to Atlantic City, New Jersey, and took a 2-month training up there, trying to make a soldier out of this civilian, which they never ever really accomplished in the 3 years I was in the service, because I always claimed I was a civilian in a military outfit.
In a uniform.
I wasn't used to taking orders from anyone.
Sure, I understand.
And, being an Irish and German descent,
Powerful combination.
That don't go over too well.
Powerful combination. Where did they send you from Fort Thomas?
To Atlantic City, New Jersey.
That was where you went directly to Atlantic City from Fort Thomas.
Yeah.
How long were you there in that training?
Just about 2 months.
About 2 months.
Yeah, and then from there, why?
You got orders for something else.
Went over to Galena, Washington.
Now, Galena, Washington.
Yeah.
I'm from the West myself. I'm trying to, was that near Seattle?
No, that's on the other coast. They're right near Spokane.
Yeah, over in the eastern part of the
Right,
state. Okay.
So they assigned me to a machine shop there, so I'm back in the machine shop.
Was there an air base? There was an air base there, was there?
No, it was just a training base there
Oh.
in Galena. And from there, while we shipped down to Blythe, California.
Okay.
And right on the
desert.
Right on the desert, right on the border of Arizona,
Yeah.
California. And that's when I thanked the good Lord that they didn't put me in the tank battalion, because when we were transported from one desert spot, because we went from Blythe, California, where we were living in barracks there, and then they were asking for volunteers. My brother warned me, don't volunteer for anything. But I was getting a little bored, and the officers assured us that this is not going to be, digging ditches or cleaning the trains. This is sincere. We do need volunteers. And so he sounds sincere, so
Sure.
I was one of several that volunteered. So I sent us down to Rice, California, and we set up tents down there, 5-man tents and mess tents for 227 men. And so in traveling from Rice, at that time I had already accumulated this big semi-trailer, and it was equipped with machine shop equipment. So we had a lathe, milling machine, we had a 60-gallon gas tank in there, and a generator, so we're all self-contained in this thing. And traveling from Blythe to Rice, we had to see a lot of convoys. coming in the opposite direction, and there was a lot of patents people were training out there at the
Oh,
time.
sure.
And so they poor devils, well, I'd stop alongside the road, because the only time they were allowed to cross a road is in their tanks, just at certain intervals. And so if they had any mail, they usually asked us if we could take their mail with them. And when I saw these poor devils come up out of those tanks with nothing but a helmet liners or skivvies, and I mean, they looked like lobsters. I said, thank good Lord, I mean, you knew what you were doing.
Right, that's right.
And, of course, I had been probably with Patton at the time. We were the opposing force.
Did you ever see Patton in person?
No.
Yeah.
Doolittle, yes, but not Patton.
Oh, you saw Doolittle?
Yeah, well, that's longer down the story.
Right, okay.
Now, I never got to see Patton, but they had quite a few people out there with their tanks crossing the desert. Spent a short time in Rice, and from there went to Needles, California, another desert outpost.
Boy, you got a taste of the desert for sure.
Loved it, loved it. And
Yeah.
of course, now we're in wintertime though, but the days were hot, but the evenings were cool, so you get a pile on everything you could. But I
Very
really,
dry.
Yeah, very dry, and really, you could get burned very easily out there because you
yes.
didn't recognize how severe
Right.
the temperature was. But from, let's see, thermal, I went to, from Needles rather. From Needles, I went to Thermal, California.
A very appropriate name.
Now, I don't know where you're familiar with that area, but it's
I am.
part of the Date country out there. And it was also the location of Salton Sea. Have you ever heard of Salton Sea?
Yes, indeed.
And this was the movie Wake Island was made, and quite a few of the Bob Hope and Ben Crosby movies were
I
filmed
didn't
out.
know that.
Yeah, but and some of the scenery was still setting out there from some of the movies.
Thanks.
And so we would go out daily and load up some of our gear. But prior to going there, why they try to train us on escape methods if we're aboard ship.
Okay.
And if there wasn't a life preserver available or something, to take off our trousers, tie knots in our pant leg,
Yep.
and then throw them over their head. And
Get 'em full of air.
Fill them with air.
Sure.
And that would be your salvation for a short period of time while we're feeding the sharks.
Right, not very long.
But from there, went out to Marshfield, California.
That's where you got your first taste of the Air Corps, huh?
Yeah, but and that was really an amazing setup because they had these, I guess, not remote or pilotless planes.
Drones.
Drones that
Yeah.
they were towing on C-47. They tow them out over the desert.
Target.
As targets. And quite often when they would come back, why, if they came back, we see the things that was interesting. And we were eating like humans out there because we were looking at a mess kits out on the desert. Went to Marshfield, that was just like a hotel out there.
I'll bet.
Have you ever been to Marshfield?
I've never been to the old Marshfield.
That
no.
was a city in itself.
I'm sure.
You didn't have to go off base.
Well, it was so famous, you know. I mean, everybody in those early days.
So I got a 30-day leave from there to come back to Cincinnati. And that was over, I went back to Marshfield, and my outfit's gone.
Went off and left you.
Went off and left me. And so I always say, my mother and dad, when I was younger, they used to take me to the zoo, but they had to take me home. The zoo wouldn't keep me.
Right.
So I was worried about that out in Marshfield, that the outfit left me. But I had heard scuttlebutt that they were going up to Thermal in Indio.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, well, I'm going to take my chances, and so I started thumbing a ride in that direction. I had no idea whether that's where they were going to be or not. But luckily I found the outfit.
You didn't have any orders though, did you?
That wasn't my leave orders from being on.
Yeah, but I mean, for
Yep.
further ahead, you,
I mean, being a hard-headed crowd, that's what I take my.
well, you're resourceful, very
Yeah.
resourceful.
So I thumbed a ride up there. In those days, any in uniform, you could get a ride any place, anywhere if you had a uniform on.
Did it?
Not like it is today. And found the outfit up there in Thermal, and so daily we would go out to Salton Sea and train out there, supposed to train, and that's where we learned to use our trousers as buoyancy type thing. And that was a fun trip out there, because it'd take 6 truckloads out there to the Salton Sea, and of course, being, I guess it was a resort of sort, so they had bars and everything else right there at Salton Sea. So wind up, we'd take about 5 truckloads back drunk, and 1 truckload of silvers going back to the base. And from there, they started assigning us, weeding us out. And so they warned us repeatedly that anyone that went AWOL, they were going to go in a break, and they'd wind up going initially into battle someplace.
Sure.
So I try to keep my nose clean as much as possible out there.
Boy, what an experience for a boy from southern Ohio to go be thrust into the desert like that.
Oh, yeah, because in school, in grade school, I had absolutely no interest in geography or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what? Who cares where rubber is made or where coffee is? I had no idea, and I had no interest in it. Because I mean, with my background, because my first job was 30 cents an hour. And, that's what I made for several years. Even after I come back, I wasn't making much more than that. And so out there, well, like I say, they taught us, and we had this little red-headed pilot around there, and they had a little Piper Cub training plane. And this guy, I mean, was a complete nut. Whenever we get up on the diving platform there at Salton Sea, why, he thought that was the greatest thing in the world, to come down there and buzz us and see us jump off of that platform. You can see this redhead laughing his butt off, you know.
Yeah.
But anyhow, if we were marching out on the street, of course, there are all a lot of lemon trees and orange trees, and if you'd be in the back of the field, you know, guiding us, why, you reach up and grab an orange or something, and help the first lieutenant in the front, and then look at us like we're not supposed to be doing it. You know,
Sure.
Try to just farm the blame off on the peons out there. I mean, this guy was great. I just wish I'd remembered his name. I'm lucky I remember what I had for breakfast.
Well, so that was your first taste of aviation, so to speak, and from there, what was your? From there, you went to a staging point before you went overseas, or?
I went up to Camp Shanks in New York.
Camp Shanks, that's a familiar name.
Yeah, I spent just a few days up there, and was able to finagle a leave to downtown New York.
Oh, good.
And so Buddy and I, we took a trip up to the Empire State Building, and they kept warning us, watch what you say, don't talk to any civilians or anything like that. I mean, watch what you say. So we're out there scanning out and look out in the harbor and sees a Queen Mary sitting out there.
Wow.
I said, man, look at that. I said, yeah, the girls staying alongside. I said, yeah, that's what you're going overseas on. I mean, we're just kidding her, you know, about this Queen Mary. She says, yeah, that's what you guys are going to ride on. I said, oh, yeah. I said, we've got that thing programmed and waiting for us.
How'd she know that?
You tell me. But anyhow, a few days later, we start going down to the docks, and sure enough, 22,000 of us on that ship.
22,000
on the Queen Mary. And
she was a new ship at that time, fairly new.
Yeah, I think
I think she was about 3 years old then, wasn't she?
something like that.
Yeah.
Queen Mary is
Beautiful.
second largest ship in the world. The Queen Elizabeth was larger by about 6 inches, I
Yeah,
think.
something like that.
So we started boarding that thing and then send our gear, most of our gear down in the hold. And so we were assigned to cabins. I mean, we was in a cabin one night and the deck the next night. So we alternated there.
Alternate, yeah.
So I was a non-smoker then, as I am today. And so when I went down this cabin, the cabin was built for 2 people.
Mhm.
I think there were 12 of us. We had bunks stacked in there.
In civilian times, they call them staterooms.
Yeah, staterooms, yeah. But I said, they're smart. I said, I know these guys are going to be playing cards all night and things like smoking. I said, I'm getting you one of those top bunks here, so nobody's stepping in my face in the middle of the night.
Sure.
So that's what I did. I cabbaged onto a top bunk real early like. Always out of mistake. Because they had to close all the portholes so no light would show out. And but there was naturally the guys were down there smoking. I mean, it was just like a farm bank. I mean,
Yeah.
trying to sleep up there.
How about seasickness? Did you get seasick?
Just a touch of it while I was waiting in line. We were only fed twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
And our particular mess area was a boarded over swimming pool, indoor swimming pool on Queen Mary. So I'm standing in line on the steps and the ship's waving back. I just got a touch of it
I know.
there. And so I eat boiled eggs and I don't know what else the time we were down there. So after about 2 nights in that stateroom, I mean, of putting up with these guys cussing and screaming and playing cards and smoking down here, I said, none of this for me. I'm going to find myself a place up on deck.
Fresh air.
Now that,
Fresh air.
well, now in those days, why the service was still segregated, while the blacks were still sleeping, and they slept on deck full time. They didn't have staterooms like we did.
Oh.
And so I found myself in a little spot out there on the deck underneath a lifeboat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm laying there and got a good night's sleep until I woke up the next morning and I'm stretching, looked down, there's a ledge. It's like about that alongside there. I said, my God, a good thing I don't walk in my sleep, because if I'd have rolled over in my sleep, I'd been 13 decks down to the water there.
You'd been gone forever.
So, and I don't swim.
Oh, boy.
So
Yeah.
I elected to find another spot after that. But, so I spent, I guess, a better part of the trip up on deck. And it was really a strange thing. This ship was so huge. And as you can, if you've ever been in a little speedboat, you know, on red water, and somebody throws a juice to it and that nose comes out, 22,000 troops. Now, I don't know whether they heard something or whether they're just blowing a carbon out of the cylinders or what. I mean, they kicked that thing in gear one night there, and all I could see was sky. I mean, that ship, as huge as it was, with all those troops on here,
Yeah.
I'll swear, that one bow that boat come up out of that water.
Oh, boy, oh,
It blew
boy.
my mind that anything that large
Yeah,
to
right.
do something like that.
How many days did it take to cross?
We left on June the 1st out of New York, and I took a look at the Statue of Liberty, and that's one of the rare times I was crying, because I thought, baby, I ain't gonna see you anymore. So
I know.
Kiss her goodbye. And so we pulled into Gourock, Scotland, and of course the dock was too small for the docks, so they did send out shuttle boats to pick us up, take us ashore. It was the first time I'd ever seen a carrier, you know, it was a converted
Tanker.
tanker
Yeah.
with a platform on it.
Yeah.
And it looked like a postage stamp out there. I had tried to visualize a plane landing and taking off of that thing. And saw the conning tower of the submarine sticking out of the water there. So as we got off the ship and walked through the docks, some of the horrified, we're tired, we're dirty, we couldn't take a bath. Because the only thing they had was saltwater soap.
Yeah.
And so I elected not to take a bath. So 6 days aboard the ship, I mean, stinking and sweating. And,
Wow.
we get off of there and I hear this horrible screech and noise. And come around the thing towards the railroad tracks, and here's a bunch of Scottish bagpipers out there serenading us. God, and this is music?
Now, what season of the year was this that you made the crossing? Was that in the spring or summer? Or? So, you know, was it winter weather or what?
Winter, yeah, winter.
Oh, it was cold.
Yeah, cold.
Ooh! Oh, and all those troops aboard that ship.
But 6 days.
6 days.
Yeah, we landed June the 6th of 1943.
How about
The
that?
year before D-Day.
So here you were in a foreign country, and you were being serenaded by these screeching.
God, and we were tired, we're dirty, and it ain't the rock and roll and stuff like that and the Lawrence Welk type things that we had in the States. But,
Well, what kind of facilities did they have ashore for you? Did they have barracks or something?
Well, we boarded trains there in Scotland and sent us down to the little town of Shrewsbury.
Oh, yeah.
And this was an air base that they were just building up, and the runways were still cut up there to keep enemy planes from landing on it.
Right.
And we had warehouse type things there, so we stayed in these warehouses for about 2 or 3 days.
Did you have cots or bunks or what?
Bunks, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a little more convenient what we had out on the desert.
Sure.
So we spent a few days there in Shrewsbury, and my memory failed. We went to one other base after that, but from there we went to Grimsby down in Lincolnshire. And say this is right across the river from the large town of Hull. Anybody's familiar with Hull?
Mm-hmm.
But Hull was really a target for the Germans at that time of the year. And although there was a British bomber base just 2 miles from us, and the Krauts would come over with those fellows, and because they didn't believe in daytime bombing, the
Right.
British, and what the Germans would do was just fall in formation with them. And as soon as the first plane touched down, well, they'd blow him off on the runway. Now these guys are landing in so close proximity, you might take the first one out, but probably take out about 2 or 3 after that because they couldn't pull up in time
Right.
to get away from that damaged plane on the runway. So July the 13th, I guess it was, my guy says, spinner. Well, my name in the service was Spinner because a machinist is a spinner in terminal.
Okay.
So
Spinner, that's good to know.
So that's what my nickname was all the time I was in the service.
Spinner Teismann, huh?
Spinner type. Yeah, Dad's rocking and roll, of course, Spinner, get up, I go here. So I said, why? It's an air raid. Well, the barrack was rattling, the windows were rattling and everything else, and I slept through it. And my hearing is bad now, but it wasn't near as bad then as it is today. But I slept right through that bombing raid, and they said, you gotta go to the air shelter. I said, the hell with this? I said, I ain't going down that stinking place with a bunch of you sweaty drunks. I said, you gotta go. So I threw my gas mask at me and the rest of my gear, my helmet. So herded me over to this little hole in the ground, this air raid shelter. I was trying to use torture. So I did slept through that bombing raid. And, a couple of days later, I had an opportunity to get a pass to go down in not Goxhill, but Grimsby.
Mm-hmm.
Goxhill is our air base, but Grimsby was the closest major town. It was a major fishing town over there. So while they were blasting this air base, British Air Base, while they're straight downtown, and there was a rail station down there.
Wow.
And they played hell with that rail station down here. And when I start walking down the street, well, you can see the holes where they come down.
Yeah.
The holes in the building there. So that's the closest I ever got to combat, if you want to call it, to see what these.
Well, you're lucky you didn't get
and,
strafed.
So I tell everybody, I said, I can't die because the devil's got enough problems. I mean, you don't need me.
Doesn't need you
You don't need
added
me.
to
No,
it.
but anyhow, that town was really tore up quite a bit. The rail area was hit. Hull was really plastered.
Yeah,
Particular night.
that was a big target.
Yeah, it was a major fishing town and supply town.
Yeah, wasn't there a lot of coal shipped out of Hull? I think.
No, that was up in Scotland.
Oh, okay.
What do they call that? Hauling coal? I mean, you're doing
Yeah.
something unnecessary or you're hauling.
Yeah, right. It's like hauling coal to Newcastle. Newcastle,
yeah.
That's it.
I spent a night.
That's it.
Newcastle. But most that was primarily fishing.
Right.
Because they had a lot of war plants down there.
Did you have any interaction with the English people?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you meet a
right.
girl?
Huh?
Did you meet a girl?
Well, no, because I was engaged to one in Cincinnati.
Oh, I
at the time,
see.
But I did go to dances over there.
Sure.
So that cost me my first marriage of 21 years. 21 years with my first wife and 4 boys. But whatever, she got a bug in her butt that I was shacking up with every girl in England while I was over there.
Oh.
But strange it may seem, the night before I got married, I had to ask my dad what to do. 'Cause, the opportunities were there.
Yeah.
I mean, a bar of candy could buy you anything in England. And, but I try to keep myself,
Of course.
engaged to a good Catholic gal there in Cincinnati. And I was, because I'd seen these guys split out their test every morning, wondering,
Yeah.
whether they're going to make it through without the prophylactics.
Right, right.
And so I kept my nose pretty well clean. Only 2 boys in the family. Mom and Daddy never ever taught us anything about sex or what to do. So I knew absolutely nothing. My dad, I mean, of course, he kind of laughed. He kind of filled me a little bit on what to do on my wedding night.
Mm-hmm.
But to hear my wife talk for those 21 years while I was shacking up with everything over there. So,
Well, now.
So it cost me my first marriage.
Well, it's funny how life takes twists and turns, and I know what you mean. How long were you then transferred to Gox Hill?
Yeah, I spent 18 months on Gox Hill.
18 months.
18 months.
Boy, that's a long time.
And that's what I say is a high percentage of the 8th Air Force fighter pilots were coming through our air base to get acclimated to the flying condition, because flying conditions in Great Britain were a lot different than what they were in the States.
Oh, yeah.
So they had to get acclimated to the temperature, the rain, the constant
Exactly.
rain. And so we lost a lot of young pilots over there. That the first one I saw, I just heard this screaming. I think it was a P-51 that this kid took up.
Uh-huh.
And so we heard it, and so you just see a dot in the air, and just saying, well, pull out, you're talking to yourself.
Right.
And this guy nose dived into the Humber River.
Oh.
By there. And they never did find the engine in the plane.
Is that so?
But he had pulled his ripcord while he was in the cockpit. He threw the canopy off, but he was just hanging in a cockpit.
Got caught.
Tied up in his shrouds
Yeah.
and things like that.
Oh,
And so
terrible.
that
Tragic.
was a pretty sickening
Yeah. Speaking about a P-51, which was a really hot plane, boy, that was a great plane. We've got, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, we've got out here at the Claremont County Airport what we call the Warbird Museum. Have you heard of that?
Well, I've been out to see the B-17.
Have you?
Well, they're still working on it.
Well, now, wait a minute, no, they had, the B-17's up at the Blue Ash Airport.
Oh, yeah.
They got a B-25 out there that they have at Claremont County.
Oh, do they?
Oh, yeah, they got a B-25 out there. But they do have a P-51 out there, Thunderbolt, that they, I mean a Mustang that they fly now. It's flyable. So sometime I hope you get a chance to get out there.
Oh, yeah, I'd love
Let
it.
me ask you some more about some of the planes that you worked on.
Well, we had the P-51 Mustang, the P-47 Thunderbolt,
Yeah?
the P-38 Lightning.
Ooh,
And the Lightning, well, of course, when we got our Lightnings over there, why, the kids were young and inexperienced. A lot of the guys were getting killed on that.
that was a tough plane to fly, yeah.
One day while we were in the huts or in the shop weather, we heard this terrible, terrible screaming noise. And so naturally, we always run out to a taxi perimeter and watch, like, see this shiny airplane up there. Finally could make out say it was a P-38. No
Wow.
chemical. And I mean, this guy was doing everything. I was, well, where's all the noise coming from? Well, he had a completely modified P-38. Tony LaVere, chief test pilot for Lockheed at that time. And so our base commander was Harry W. McGee from Indian Hill. And hate to say it, one of the nastiest, useless sounding guns that ever drew a breath. Yeah, he was breathing air that a human being should have been breathing.
Censorship.
My hands are off the pause
Harry
button.
W. McGee, he had a beautiful wife, and but some of the stupid things, and he had an A-26 at his disposal. But that's get a little ahead of the story here. That when this P-38 started coming over the field and doing every conceivable maneuvers that you can think of. First one engine,
Yeah.
then they feathered a prop, the next engine. He's doing flips and turns, and one of the major rules on that airbase is when you land, you always want to the end of that
End of the runway.
and then go around to the taxi strip. Well, this plane, he gets halfway down, and he comes across the field right by our control tower.
Oh, boy.
And wheels go off to him. McGee's come sliding out there in his Jeep, and you can almost read his lips. He's calling it for something another low-bred SOB into the sun. And that thing cut across that field right by that thing, come up onto the taxi strip, lines up with a hangar. That was a no-no, not to pull an airplane under its own power into a hangar. And he died dead center of that thing, but never pulled into the thing. Hopped down, about that time I could see the writing on it. Tony LaVere, chief test pilot, Lockheed.
Oh,
So civilian, McGee can't do anything to him. I mean,
he was and a
so-
hot pilot.
So what they did, they sent him over there to try to build up the confidence in our kids there to show what could be done with that plane.
Sure.
And under at first, you could lose a tail and still fly. You could lose an engine and still fly the thing.
Yeah.
And so Tony stayed there for about 2 or 3 days.
It was a very sensitive plane, though, to fly. I know
a
that.
lot of problems.
I've talked to guys who did that, yeah.
That's quite a while before because of the counter-rotating thing to
Yeah.
cut down on the torque.
Two engines.
Why they modified it, but it's just amazing what you could do with that aircraft.
So you, with the 38 and
51.
51s and the 47s, you were just working on fighter planes then, huh?
Primarily, yeah, a lot of.
Were there big bombers landing there too?
Well, that's towards the end there.
Toward the
Yeah,
end.
I mean, we had some damaged bombers.
Okay.
But a lot of times when the mechanics would go out and work on these engines, all of the studs holding the engine
Mounts?
tops on them.
Yeah.
Why, in trying to get that off to work on the engine, a lot of times they would shear that thing off. Well, they would play around with it a long time, taking the hammer and chisel. Well, when they couldn't get it out, then they'd send for us in a machine shop out there. So it was our job to try, and I think it was about a 25 win, 75% loss, because if we didn't get that bolt out of there, they would pull the engine on the thing.
Yeah.
Might have had 2 dozen bolts on there, but they needed them all to
Wow.
hold the head on.
Sure.
So that's what made our job was to work on the aircraft parts. And then, of course, we were losing a lot of pilots in combat that again, inexperienced, they were so intent on getting credit for a kill.
Sure. Oh, I
that,
know.
A lot of times, if they got a strike on an enemy plane, well, they just kept following them down. So we had actual combat photos where these fellows went right into the ground because they neglected to watch your airspeed or your altitude. And we had actual photos of the guy that shoots down a plane and our plane is going right into the ground right behind him. Because the guy, he's out of, but these guys, you know, it was enough smarts to watch where they were going.
Sure.
And they were so intent on getting credit for that kill.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do about that? So I come back to the airfield. And somebody got the idea. We had 2 link trainers, so we were familiar with the link trainer.
Absolutely.
This is a modified, it's a cockpit sitting on a pedestal that you can teach blind flying and instrument flying. So we had 2 of those things on the base. So we took the canopy off of one, and then I got a gun sight off of a damaged plane, mounted that on there, and we mounted German silhouettes in a window. Where these guys could train in and indoctrinate them.
Silhouettes of the
Watch
planes.
your altitude, watch your airspeed. It's nice to shoot one down, but make damn sure you don't go in behind him.
Right. Now, one of the problems, of course, that our young flyers found was that the experience of the Luftwaffe flyers was vastly more than ours because they had been fighting for a long time.
Absolutely.
Some of them had fought in Spain in the Civil War, you know, and
Well, they got so adept too because we were playing so much hob with their oil fuels and fuel things that they were limited on fuel supply too.
Right.
And munitions, we were playing heck with their munition supply dumps. But the Germans were pretty good about that too, especially with the P-38 with their twin booms and twin tails. I had ships come back there with the vertical stabilizer cut off with the pops of the German aircraft. Because the German run out of shells, so they were going to get that guy one way or the other.
Gonna ram him.
So they'd fly in close enough
Yeah.
that they'd cut the tail end off of that P-38. But luckily, they had 2, so
Right.
I had them come back in the plane with us thing just like
just
an angle
sliced off.
with,
Just imagine.
an enemy plane and cut that
Wow.
vertical stabilizer off of
Well, that pilot would be lucky to get that plane down to the ground, too,
there. When
safely.
you see a B-17 come back, well, you can drive a truck through it. The thing's still flying.
Right.
You know, we had some pretty good
4
pilots.
engines.
We had some pretty good pilots. over
Oh,
there.
we had some wonderful pilots. You mentioned earlier that you had seen Jimmy Doolittle.
Yeah.
Now, where did you see him?
Well, this is when the war was winding down. Why, we had set up an air-sea rescue base on our thing. Jimmy had finished up, I guess, what he was doing over in Asia, and he came over here to head up our air-sea rescue. So they brought in quite a few obsolete B-17s.
Oh, yeah.
And so our job was to strip the belly turret off of that and all excess material, and then we strapped the rescue boat on the bottom end of it and hung the boat by the bomb shackles in the plane. He had 4 parachutes on his boat. Because if we didn't get a pilot or a crew member out of the North Sea in 20 minutes, we kissed him goodbye.
Oh, yeah.
The drive exposure. So
Terrible.
we had to come up with many methods of trying to cut down on the time element and getting these guys out of that water. And initially, before Jimmy came over here, well, we had what they call a PBY-5, it's a flying boat, twin-engine flying boat.
Catalina.
So they sent those things over to us. So because the hatch is higher than this building on the water. And so in order to get down to that water to get that guy out of there,
Sure.
so they either jump in or whatever. So we took and rigged up a ladder that hooked over the side of that hatch where the rescue person could climb down in his wetsuit, and it cut down substantially on the time element. But we built those ladders to hook over that hatch. So
You know, that's such an important point that you brought up about this, because a lot of people have never been exposed to information like this. And the fact, in our nation, in our American philosophy and everything, life was so precious, and we'd do almost anything possible, as you point out, to rescue those young men and save them, because I served in the Pacific in the Navy, and the Japanese didn't have that philosophy at all. If they couldn't get to a man, that was it.
It was an honor to die for the country.
Die for the emperor. Okay. Well, listen,
You
we're,
asked about Jimmy Doolittle. I never met him personally, but he did come over to inspect our facilities and see what we were doing on this air sea rescue. And that just amazed me, because I had a picture in my mind. He was a much bigger man than what he was. But,
oh, yeah.
I think he was, what, 5'7" or something?
5'7", something like that. And you know, by this time, as I read history and understand it, because when they had their 30 seconds over Tokyo in April of 1942, he was only a lieutenant colonel. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And then, after that, they jumped him to a brigadier general very fast. He passed over 3 ranks, or 2 ranks before, you know, but, so this air-sea rescue, this was a very important thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were right there on the ocean.
Right, yeah. I mean, we could see, when we went into the little town of Cleethorpes, right outside of Garfield, was a summer vacation town. Why, the V1s, we would see the V1 come over our huts every morning.
Those were the buzz bombs, weren't they?
Yeah, and it sounded like a big old Mack truck coming up there, or a laboring coming over there.
Terrible.
Baby, don't run out of fuel. But then when they set up the V2s, we couldn't see them, but I mean, you could see the flame trails from them across the North Sea. And so
Wow.
I happened to be coming up out of the tube in London one time and heard this horrific explosion. About the same time the explosion, the sirens went off.
Mm-hmm.
Because this thing naturally flying faster than the speed of sound.
Right.
So as soon as the explosion came, when the air raid sirens go on. So we're just coming up at the mouth of the tube, and at that time they turned us all around and went back, because it was quite a shelter for the British people during the war in London.
So you saw civilians underground.
Oh, yeah.
And the way they had to live,
Lived
packed in
down
like
there.
sardines and everything, yeah. Well, it's just amazing, Paul, what you saw, the variety of experiences that you had.
Didn't get to shoot anybody.
I know, but what you did was so important, because without you, we couldn't have maintained.
But that's another story about shooting. I mean.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
I know.
Because we did. They were expecting an air raid one time, a parachute raid towards the end of the war, and the Germans had dropped a lot of this shift, I guess, that's silver foil.
Yeah.
I mean, our field
to throw the radar off.
Yeah, so we were expecting a raid, so they called us out on the field with our battle gear, so-called battle gear. Well, putting a rifle in an airman's arms, I mean, that's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Because we weren't taught to shoot. I mean, we were taught to do things, with
Right,
our hands.
absolutely.
So they called us all out. We're laying out there in the ditches along the airfield at Garfield. And I said, "Hey, Spinner, you got ammunition?" I said, "No." I said, "You can have it." I said, "No." That's what we're supposed to do, point our finger at these clowns and say, "Bang, you're dead." It was almost dangerous to put a gun in our hand. We had a parade down in town. I'm sorry to carry on like this.
Oh, that's very interesting.
But the airmen were the best dressed people in the service.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, access to sewing machines.
Very natty.
And shine shoes,
Oh, yeah.
cleats sewed in.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as marching and soldiering, so we had to go down to a parade one time down in Grimsby, and there was a bunch of blacks that were working on our field, laying down hard stands and that. They were in there, and man, these guys could march. Oh boy, man. They sing the same song and all that. The British, I mean, they're rough burlap sack uniforms, and picking those big old heavy shoes up and clomping them down. You could hear them for a country mile coming there.
Right.
But you get a bunch of airmen out there, And how 227 men with 2 feet only, and not 2 of those people being in step, it's incredible. It's hard to imagine. I mean, the best dressed people in the outfit, none of us knew how to march.
Well, that's right. You were trained to use your brain and your hands and your capabilities. So when were you there when the war ended in 45?
Yeah.
So you were there for VE Day in Europe, they
Right.
called it. That was June of 1945. Yeah.
June or August or something like
Yeah,
that.
June.
August was Japanese, wasn't it?
August is when we
Japanese.
dropped the atom bombs
Yeah.
in Japan, and then the surrender in Asia was the 6th of September, 1945. So, but I know that June was what they called Victory in Europe time. Yeah, it was just a little bit about a year and a few days after the landings at Normandy, which was 1944. So there you were in England, the war was over. What was your next move?
Yeah, we just stayed around on your base for a short time, and then they shipped us, reassigned us to another thing in Norwich, England. That was another bomber base. They used it during the hauling of food.
Mm-hmm.
During the blockade, the Russian blockade. They used Norwich and Ipswich. We were stationed there for a short time.
All those wonderful, funny names.
Yeah. And the one cathedral there in Norwich, why they had a real famous graveyard there, and it was dedicated to Nurse Edith Cavell.
Oh, yes.
And she was a World War I nurse. Her grave is in that place there.
She'd been executed by the Germans.
Yep.
Because they thought she was a spy.
But it was an interesting thing. It would take $1 million for the experience, but
I know.
I wouldn't
I know.
wish it on anybody, to go over there. But I can say I was forced into it by being drafted. A lot of the fellows these are some of the guys that I graduated in 1939.
Yeah, you want to hold this up here? Oh, this is.
This fellow here, he never did go into the service.
Okay.
All the rest of them.
Yeah.
This guy was cut up like a hamburger. He was in a truck, what they call a follow me truck.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they would lead the planes to the parking stands, and the plane ran into the back of the truck and killed a couple of them, chopped him up like a hamburger.
Oh.
And he just died a couple of years ago.
Is that so? He survived that accident?
Yeah, he was given the last rites, because these old school guys, we all went to school together. So
Sure.
all graduated in 1939.
Now, when was this reunion? Do you remember when that was?
It's 87.
87, 1987, 39,
Yeah,
87.
These two guys are dead now.
Uh-huh.
This guy here, this guy's got asthma, he's got his own machine shop down in Sedamsville.
Well, I'll be darned.
And this guy's all of them have really made something for them, graduating from that mechanical vocational.
Right.
school.
Now, you've got a very interesting book here, A Village at War, Gox Hill, U.S. Army Air Force Base, Fighter Training Group, U.S. 8th Air Force. You've got a whole chapter in here that's headed Paul Teismann.
Yeah, but nobody knows their lies, I mean. But,
Well, I don't believe that. I think that's just wonderful, and I hope I can get, maybe I can borrow your book here sometime and get to read this.
Anytime, as long as I get it back.
I would love to do that. Paul, this has just been a great experience to have you here, and oh yeah.
Take a look at the contour. What's it
Oh.
look like?
Oh my gosh.
It's made off of a B-17 propeller blade.
Is that so?
Right, yeah, the base of it is out on the leading edge.
Okay.
Where it thins down.
I don't know if you can
And, they,
see this or not. Can you get in, zero in
Let's
on
see.
this? He's got his name on here, and the stand is made out of a propeller blade from a B-17. That's just
That's
amazing. Just amazing.
It's about 3/4 of the frame. It's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, good.
Nice anniversary clock on the end.
Yes, exactly. Well, Paul, do you have a lot of memorabilia,
No,
souvenirs?
Telling a son when we went to breakfast this morning that 98% of the things that I had during my service area, in fact, I can't find one picture I want to bring. Maybe a copy of it in here, that, because my wife was just giving me a fit about all the things I was supposed to have done. I hadn't been quintuplets to do all the things she accused me of. So anything that remotely related to my time in the service, I destroyed.
I know.
Just to get out of sight, out of mind.
I know it. You know, that was an attitude. The fellas coming back were so happy it was over, so glad to be back with their families and
This is
home.
the original I can't find, but this is out in front of my shop.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I know what you mean. And that was the prevailing aspect, was that we Yanks, the Yanks were determined to win, and we're going to do it, but when it was over, we're going home.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like the French Foreign Legion.
We were overseas and oversexed.
The camera's still rolling, beware.
Okay, well, we're right down to the end of our time here, Paul, and we can't thank you enough. I know that
That was our first sergeant that was buried there. He's cremated and buried in the site where they found his propeller blade out on the air base.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, isn't that something? Yeah. How old a man was he? Do you know? Was he a...
Same my age. I'm 84 now, and he's been pretty much the same.
Yeah, pretty much the same age. Well, the young fellas were eager to get home and get their families going and have a house of their own and so forth, and to start a career. And we thank you so very, very much for your time and your...
Well, because you guys are kids, see. I mean, you don't know whether I'm telling the truth or lying.
Oh, I know. This is I'm gonna, and this is no lie, I'm older than you are.
You're more than 84?
I'm 86.
86?
Yeah.
Well, you've been eating your Wheaties.
Well, I have. I've been lucky, but I don't want to go into that. But nevertheless, what you have done here and what you did in your career, your contribution to our great nation. We're still the greatest nation in the world, no matter what anybody says. And yes, we've got warts and scars and cracks.
This nation's all right, it's just the idiots up in Washington.
Well, that's certainly part of the problem. We thank you again, Paul. God bless you, and keep up your good sense of humor.
You want to borrow that or what?
I would love to borrow that.
That's why I get it back.
I will get it back to you. Thank you very much. And we've been talking to Mr. Paul Teismann of Blue Ash. A wonderful guy with a great sense of humor and a joie de vivre that is incomparable. So thanks again, Paul, and we thank the Blue Ash Library and Joel Corneli for being so wonderful with everything here.
I'm a charter member and a member of the 8th Air Force Museum down in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, yes, yeah.
If you ever have an opportunity, it's just spitting distance off of 95.
I know where it is. I was just down to Beaufort a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
If you ever have an opportunity to go through that museum down here.
I want to do that sometime. Yeah. I was over at Paris Island, but I didn't get down to Savannah this time. Well, thanks again, Paul, and we thank everybody here, and it's been a wonderful experience. And God bless you, and God bless America.